New chapter. How many chapters? So we're on chapter 10. We're on chapter 10, okay? If you guys would like to, we're reading Akotar, A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you guys want to stay updated on how far we are or where we are, join or check out the YouTube !react in the chat. And yeah, that way, you know, all the readings go onto that channel. There's a playlist for it, so check it out if you haven't. And yeah, so little recap on how far we've gotten and what's happened. So bear with me. 10 chapters, synopsis is going to be hard, and I'm going to try my best. Okay, so there's a main character, and her name is Feyre. Okay, and she has a middle child. Sorry, she's the youngest sister. The middle child's name is Elaine. Oldest sister is named Nesta. And then they have a dad, which we don't know their name. And their mom passed away early. And the mom was like, listen up, Feyre. It's your responsibility to take care of everyone because everyone else is a lazy piece of shit. And then Feyre was like, all right, I can do that. And her dad can't really work, has a really bad knee. So they're kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? And it's up to Feyre to take care of the family. And now Feyre has to go hunting for the whole family. And Feyre went hunting one day, right? And saw a deer. And as she was about to kill the deer, a wolf came out of nowhere. Boom, bang, bit into the deer. And then Feyre decided to kill the wolf who was killing the deer, and then killed both, basically. Came back with the hide, with the deer, skinned the wolf as well, sold it, you know. And as they were eating the deer, boom, a mythical creature comes in. And they were like, yo, who the fuck killed that wolf? And then Feyre was like, it was me. So apparently there's mythical creatures called fairies. And apparently that wolf was a fairy. And they can transform from human into beasts. Some of them can. Yeah, and then Feyre ended up killing one of them. So they're pissed as hell. And they have a treaty, right? So the humans and the fairies have a treaty that don't kill each other, okay? And that's exactly what Feyre did. Killed one of their own, or one of their fairies. And yeah, the fairy creature who barged in didn't like that. And they were like, all right, you can either pay with your life or you have to live in our land for all eternity. And Feyre was like, all right, I'll come with you then. So then Feyre ended up traveling all the way to Prythian, which is the land of the fairies, or the High Fae, and or the Faes. And yeah, she got introduced to where this mythical creature named Tomlin resides, and it's a giant manor. It's super luxurious, so much stuff, food, everything. And yeah, and so she's kind of like trying to find a way to escape. She's trying to find like a lucrative way to get out of this treaty. She wants to go back to her family to protect them. And Tomlin has a right-hand man named Lucian. And Feyre was like, well, I'm going to get under Tomlin's skin, or I'm going to get more information by kind of hanging out with Lucian. So then Lucian's like, all right, you want to come hunting with me? And Feyre was like, sure, I can do that. So then Feyre went hunting with Lucian, and as they were hunting, something crazy happened. They started getting this like weird feeling that someone was hiding somewhere. And that's basically where we left off, I'm pretty sure, as they were together. I feel like the main character is kind of a bitch. She's very stubborn. She's very, very stubborn. Do they hunt humans? Koros, what's up? They don't hunt humans. Yeah, they don't hunt humans. However, that's the tale. They have a treaty, so they can't actually do that. All right. So basically at the end, yeah, Lucian felt something, some presence near them while they were hunting. Scary presence, and they were freaking out, and it was kind of a cliffhanger. So are the sex scenes at the end? I think so. I don't know. Apparently there's some juicy scenes coming up, so if you guys are interested in that, I am. I love when things get kind of crazy. All right, so chapter 10. My blood froze as a creeping, leeching cold lurched by. I couldn't see anything, just a vague shimmering in the corner of my vision, but my horse stiffened beneath me. I willed my face into blackness. Even the balmy spring woods seemed to recoil, to wither and freeze. The cold thing whispered past, circling. I could see nothing, but I could feel it, and in the back of my mind, an ancient, hollow voice whispered, I will grind your bones beneath my claws. I will drink your marrow. I will feast on your flesh. I am what you fear. I am what you dread. Look at me. Look at me. I tried to swallow, but my throat had closed up. I kept my eyes on the trees, on the canopy, on anything but the cold mass circling us again and again. Look at me. I wanted to look. I needed to see what it was. Look at me. I stared at the coarse trunk of a distant elm, thinking of pleasant things like hot bread and full bellies. I will fill my belly with you. I will devour you. Look at me. A starry, unclouded night sky, peaceful and glittering and endless. Summer sunrise. A refreshing bathe in the forest pool. Meeting with Isaac, losing myself for an hour or two in this body, in our shared breaths. It was all around us. So cold that my teeth chattered. Look at me. I stared and stared at the ever-nearing tree trunk, not daring to blink. My eyes strained, filling with tears, and I let them fall, refusing to acknowledge the thing that lurked around us. Look at me. And just as I thought I would give in, when my eyes hurt so much from not looking, the cold disappeared into the brush, leaving a trail of still, recoiling plants behind it. Only after Lucian exhaled and our horses shook their heads did I dare sag in my seat. Even the crocuses seemed to straighten again. What was that? I asked, brushing my tears from my face. Lucian's face was still pale. You don't want to know. Please, what was it, that cereal you mentioned? Lucian's russet eye was dark as he answered hoarsely. No, it was a creature that should not be in these lands. We call it the Boge. The Boge? How do you say this? B-O-G-G-E? How do you say that? How do you say that word? Bogue? Like bog? Oh, like, okay. We call it the bog. Okay. You cannot hunt it, and you cannot kill it, even with your beloved ash arrow. Why can't I look at it? Because when you look at it, when you acknowledge it, that's when it becomes real. That's when it can kill you. A spider walked down my spine. This was the Prithian I'd expected. The creatures that made humans speak of them in hushed tones even now. The reason I hadn't hesitate, nor for a heartbeat, when I considered the possibility of that wolf being a fairy. I heard its voice in my head. It told me to look. Lucian rolled his shoulders. Well, thank the cauldron that you didn't. Cleaning up that mess would have ruined the rest of my day. He gave me a wan smile. I didn't return it. I still heard the bog's voice whispering between the leaves, calling to me. I called it the boggy in my head. It's the boggy. I like the bog, yeah. After an hour of meandering through the trees, hardly speaking to each other, I stopped trembling enough to turn to him. So you're old, I said, and you carry around a sword and go on border patrol. Did you fight in the war? Fine. Perhaps I hadn't quite let go of my curiosity about his eye. He winced. Shit, Farah, I'm not that old. Are you a warrior, though? Would you be able to kill me if it ever come to it? Lucian huffed a laugh. Not as good as Tom, but I know how to handle my weapons. He patted the hilt of his sword. Would you like me to teach you how to wield a blade, or do you already know how? Oh, mighty mortal huntress. If you took down Andres, you probably don't need to learn anything. Only where to aim, right? He tapped on his chest. I don't know how to use a sword. I only know how to hunt. Same thing, isn't it? For me, it's different. Lucian fell silent, considering. I suppose you humans are such hateful cowards that you would have wet yourself, curled up, and waited to die if you'd known beyond a doubt that who Andres truly was. Insufferable. Lucian sighed as he looked at me. Over. Do you ever stop being so serious and dull? Do you ever stop being such a prick? I snapped back. Dead. Really, truly. I should have been dead for that. But Lucian grinned at me. Much better. Okay, the banter, huh? Alice, it seemed, had not been wrong. Whatever tentative truce we built that afternoon vanished at the dinner table. Tomlin was lounging in his usual seat, a long claw out and circling his goblet. It paused on the lip as I entered. Lucian on my heels, his green eyes pinned me to the spot. Right. I brushed him off that morning, claiming I wanted to be alone. Tomlin slowly looked at Lucian, whose face had turned grave. We went on a hunt, Lucian said. I heard, Tomlin said roughly, glancing between us as we took our seats. And did you have fun? Slowly, his claw sank back into his flesh. Lucian didn't answer, leaving it to me. Coward. I cleared my throat. Sort of, I said. Did you catch anything? Every word was clipped out. No, Lucian gave me a pointed cough, as if urging me to say more, but I had nothing to say. Tomlin stared at me for a long moment, then dug into his food. Not all that interested in talking to me either. Then Lucian quietly said, Tom. Tomlin looked up, more animal than fey in those green eyes, a demand for whatever it was Lucian had to say. Lucian's throat bobbed. The bog was in the forest today. The fork in Tomlin's hand folded in on itself. He said with lethal calm, You ran into it? Lucian nodded. It moved past, but came close. It must have snuck through the border. Metal groaned as Tomlin's claws punched out, obliterating the fork. He rose to his feet with a powerful, brutal movement. I tried not to tremble at the contained fury, and how his canines seemed to lengthen as he said, Where in the forest? Lucian told him. Tomlin threw a glance in my direction before stalking out of the room and shutting the door behind me with his unnerving gentleness. Lucian loosed a breath, pushing away his half-eaten food and rubbing at his temples. Where is he going? I asked, staring down the door. To hunt the bog. You said it couldn't be killed, that you can't face it. Tom can. My breath caught a bit. The gruff high fae, half-heartedly flattering me, was capable of killing a thing like the bog, and yet he served me himself that first night, offering me life rather than death. I'd known he was lethal, that he was a warrior of sorts, but... So he went to hunt the bog where we were earlier today? Lucian shrugged. He was going to pick up a trail, it would be there. I had no idea I have no idea how anyone could face that immortal horror, but it wasn't my problem. And just because Lucian wasn't going to eat anymore, it didn't mean I wouldn't. Lucian, lost in thought, didn't even notice the feast I downed. I returned to my room, and awake with nothing else to do, began monitoring the garden beyond for any signs of Tomlin's return. He didn't come back. I sharpened the knife I'd hidden away on a bit of stone I'd taken from the garden. An hour passed, and still Tomlin didn't return. The moon showed her face, casting the garden below in silver and shadow. Ridiculous. Utter ridiculous to watch for his return, to see if he could indeed survive against the bog. I turned from the window, about to drag myself into bed. But something moved out in the garden. I lunged for the curtains behind the window, not wanting to be caught waiting for him, and peered out. Not Tomlin, but someone lurked by the edges, facing the house, looking towards me. Male, hunched, and the breath went out of me as the fairy hobbled closer, just 2 steps into the light leaking from the house. Not a fairy, but a man. My father. Whoa, chapter 11. We're on chapter 11. What's her father doing there? What's her father doing there? What the fuck? And it looks like she's worried about Tomlin, huh? Uh-oh. Fair, have a little crush. Do we read another chapter? I'll remind you again, when we test the mic in VC. Okay, perfect. I can't be her dad, right? Yeah, I don't think... I don't think it's her dad. I think it's like, maybe it's, oh, what if it's the bog? Hold on, let me think. What if it's the bog shape-shifting into a memory of hers into the father to lure her out? It's got to be something. Anyway, let's keep going. I didn't give myself a chance to panic, to doubt, to do anything but wish I had stolen some food from my breakfast table as I layered on tunic after tunic and bundled myself in a cloak. Stuffing the knife I'd stolen into my boot, the extra clothes in the satchel would just be burden to carry. My father had come to take me, to save me. Whatever benefits Tomlin had given him upon my departure couldn't be too tempting then. Maybe he had a ship prepared to take us far, far away. Maybe he had somehow sold the cottage and gotten enough money to set us up in a new place, a new continent. My father, my crippled, broken father had come. A quick survey of the ground beneath my window revealed no one outside, and the silent house told me no one had spotted my father yet. He was still waiting by the edge, now beckoned to me. At least Tomlin had not returned. With a final glance at my room, listening for anyone approaching from the hall, I grasped a nearby trellis of wisteria and eased down the building. I winced at the crunch of gravel beneath the boots, but my father... this is a bait, bro. This is such a bait. My father already moving towards the outer gates, limping along with his cane. How had he even gotten here? There had to be horses nearby then. He was hardly wearing enough clothing for the winter that would await for us once we crossed the wall, but I layered on so much that I could spare him some items if need be. Keeping my movements light and silent, carefully avoiding the light of the moon, I hurried after my father. He moved with surprisingly swiftness towards the darkened hedges and the gate beyond. Only a few hall candles were burning inside the house. I didn't dare breathe too loudly, didn't dare call for my father as he limped towards the gate. If we left now, if he indeed had horses, we could be halfway home by the time they realized I was gone. And then we'd flee, Tomlin, flee the blight that could soon invade our lands. My father reached the gates. They were already open, the dark forest beyond beckoning. He must have hidden the horses deeper in. He turns toward me, that familiar face drawn and tight, those brown eyes clear for once, and beckoned. Hurry, hurry. Every movement of his hand seemed to shout. My heart was a raging beat in my chest and my throat. Only a few feet now, to him, to freedom, to a new life. A massive hand wrapped around my arm. Going somewhere? Shit. Tomlin's claws poked through my layers of clothing as I looked up at him in the unbanished terror. I didn't dare move, not as his lips thinned and the muscles in his jaw quivered, not as he opened his mouth and I glimpsed fangs, long, throat-tearing fangs shining in the moonlight. He was going to kill me right there, and then kill my father. No more loopholes, no more flattery, no more mercy. He didn't care anymore. I was as good as dead. Please, I breathed, my father, your father. He lifted his stare to the gates beyond me, and his growl rumbling through me as he bared his teeth. Why don't you look again? He released me. I staggered back a step, whirling, sucked into a breath to tell my father to run, but he wasn't there. Only a pale bow and quiver of pale arrows remained, propped up against the gates, mountain ash. They hadn't been there moments before. Hadn't. They ripped as if they were nothing but water, and then the bow and quiver became a large pack, laden with supplies. Another ripple, and there were my sisters, huddled together, weeping. My knees buckled. I didn't finish the question. My father now stood there, still hunched and beckoning, a flawless rendering. Weren't you warned to keep your wits about you? Tomlin snapped. That your human senses would betray you? He snapped beyond me, and let out a snarl so vicious that whatever the thing was by the gates shimmered with light and darted out as fast as lightning streaked through the dark. Fool, he said to me, turning. If you're ever going to run away, at least do it in the daytime. He stared me down, and the fangs slowly retracted. The claws remained. There are worse things than the bog prowling these woods at night. That thing at the gates isn't one of them, and it still would have taken a good long while devouring you. Somehow my mouth began working again, and all the things to say I blurted. Can you blame me? My crippling father appears beneath my window, and you think I'm not going to run for him? Did you actually think I'd gladly stay here forever, even if you'd taken care of my family? All for some treaty that had nothing to do with me and allows your kind to slaughter humans as you see fit? He flexed his finger, as if trying to get the claws back in, but they remained out, ready to slice through flesh and bone. What do you want, Feyre? I want to go home. Home to what exactly? You'd prefer that miserable human existence to this? I made a promise, I said, my breath ragged, to my mother when she died, that I look after my family, that I take care of them. All I have done every single day, every hour, has been for that vow. And just because I was hunting to save my family to put food in their bellies, I'm now forced to break it. He stalked towards the house, and I gave him a wide breath before falling into steps behind him. His claws slowly retracted. He didn't look at me as he said, "You're not breaking your vow. You are fulfilling it, and then some, by staying here. Your family is better cared for now than they were when you were there." Those chipped, miscolored paintings inside the cottage flashed in my vision. Perhaps they would forget who had even painted them in the first place. Insignificant. That's all those years I'd given them would be. As insignificant as I was to these high fae. And that dream I've had of one day living with my father with enough food and money and paint, it had been my dream, no one else's. I rubbed at my chest. I can't just give up on it, on them, no matter what you say. Even if I had been a fool, a stupid human fool, to believe my father would ever actually come for me. Tomlin's eyes eyed me. Oh wait, Tomlin eyed me sidelong. You're not giving up on them. Living in luxury, stuffing myself with food, how is that not? They are cared for. They are fed and comfortable. Fed and comfortable. If he couldn't lie, if it were true, then it was beyond anything I'd ever dared hope for. Then my vow to my brother was fulfilled. It stunned me enough that I didn't see anything for a moment as we walked. My life was now owned by the treaty, but perhaps I'd been freed in another sort of way. Finally. She's realizing it. We neared the sweeping stairs that led into the manor, and I finally asked, Lucian goes on border patrol, and you've mentioned other sentries, yet I've never seen one here. Where are they all? At the border, he said, as if there were a suitable answer. Then he added, we don't need sentries if I'm here, because he was deadly enough. I tried not to think about it, but still I asked, were you trained as a warrior then? Yes. When I didn't reply, he added, I spent most of my life in my father's war band on the borders. Trained as a warrior to one day serve him, or others, running these lands, was not supposed to fall to me. The flatness with which he said it told me enough about how he felt about his current title, about why the presence of his silver-tongued friend was necessary, but it was too personal, too demanding to ask what had occurred to change his circumstances so greatly. So I cleared my throat and said, what manner of fairies prowl the woods beyond this gate? If the bog isn't the worst of them, what was that thing? What I meant to ask was, what would have tormented and then eaten me? Who are you to be so powerful that they pose no threat to you? He paused to the bottom step, waiting for me to catch up. A puka. They use your own desires to lure you to some remote place, and then they eat you, slowly. It probably smelled your human scent in the woods and followed it to the house. I shivered and didn't bother to hide it. Tomlin went on. These lands used to be well guarded. The deadliest fairies were contained within the borders of their native territories, monitored by the local Fey lords, or driven into hiding. Creatures like the puka never would have dared set foot here, but now the sickness that infected Prithian has weakened the wards that kept them out. A long pause, like the words were choked out of him. Things are different now. It's not safe to travel alone at night, especially if you're a human, because humans were defenseless as babies compared to natural-born predators like Lucian and Tomlin, who didn't need weapons to hunt. I glanced at his hands, but found not trace of the claws. Only tanned, calloused skin. What else is different now? I asked, trailing him up the marble from the steps. Trailing him up the marble front steps. He didn't step this time. Didn't even look over his shoulder to see me, as he said, everything. So I truly was to live there forever. As much as I longed to ensure that Tomlin's word was caring for my family was true, as much as his claim that I was taking better care of my family by staying away, even if it was truly fulfilling that vow to my mother by staying in Prithian, without the weight of that promise. Oh, wait. I'm going to lean this way. What are you guys talking about? The workout stream? I'm definitely not doing it tonight. I don't even know if I could do it tomorrow. I can't do it tomorrow either. It would have to be the day after. But anyway. So I truly was to live there forever. As much as I longed to ensure that Tomlin's words about caring for my family was true, as much as his claim that I was taking better care of my family was staying away, even if I was truly fulfilling that vow to my mother by staying in Prithian, without the weight of that promise, I was left hollow and empty. Over the next 3 days, I found myself joining Lucian on Andrus's old patrol, while Tomlin hunted the ground for the bog, unseen by us. Despite being an occasional bastard, Lucian didn't seem to mind my company, and he did most of the talking, which was fine. It left me to brood over the consequences of firing a single arrow. An arrow. I never fired a single one during those 3 days we rode along the border. That very morning, I'd spied a red doe in a glen, and aimed out of instinct, my arrow poised to fly right into her eyes as Lucian sneered that she was not a fairy, at least. But I'd stared at her, fat and healthy and content, and then slackened the bow, replaced the arrow in my quiver, and let the doe wander on. I never saw Tomlin around the manor. Off hunting the bog day and night, Lucian informed me. Even at dinner, he spoke little before leaving early, off to continue this hunt, night after night. I didn't mind his absence. It was a relief, if anything. On the third night, after my encounter with the puka, I'd scarcely sat down before Tomlin got up. Giving an excuse about not wanting to waste hunting time, Lucian and I stared after him for a moment. What I could see of Lucian's face was pale and tight. "You worry about him," I said. Lucian slumped in his seat, wholly undignified for a Fey Lord. Tomlin gets into moods. He doesn't want help hunting the bog. He prefers being alone and having the bog on our lands. I don't suppose you'd understand. The puka are minor enough not to bother him, but even after he's shredded the bog, he'll brood over it. And there's no one who can help him at all. He would probably... Oh, shit. I'm going to turn it this way. Trying to get comfortable. He doesn't want you helping hunting the bog. He prefers being alone, and having the bog in our lands, I don't suppose you'd understand. The puka are minor enough not to bother him, but even after he's shrugged the bog, he'll brood over it. And there's no one who can help him at all. He would probably shred them for disobeying his orders to stay away. A brush of ice slithered across my nape. He would be that brutal? Lucian studied the wine in his goblet. You don't hold on to power by being everyone's friend. And among the fairies, lesser and high fae alike, a firm hand is needed. We're too powerful, and too bored with immortality, to be checked by anyone else. It seemed like a cold, lonely position to have, especially when you didn't particularly want it. I wasn't sure why it bothered me so much. The snow was falling, thick and merciless, already up to my knees as I pulled the bowstring back, farther and farther, until my arm trembled. Behind me, a shadow lurked, watched. I didn't dare to look at it, to see who might be within the shadow, observing not as the wolf stared at me across the clearing, just staring, as if waiting, as if daring me to fire that ash arrow. No, I didn't want to do it. Not this time, not again, no. But I had no control over my fingers, absolutely none, and he was still staring as I fired. One shot straight through the golden eye. A plume of blood splattered the snow, and a thud of heavy body, a sigh of winds. No, it wasn't a wolf that hit the snow, no. It was a man, tall and well-formed. No, not a man, a high fae, with those pointed ears. I blinked, and then my hands were warm and sticky with blood. Then his body was red and skinless, seeming in the cold, and it was his skin that I held in my hands, and I threw myself awake. Sweat slipping down my back, and forced myself to breathe, to open my eyes and note each detail of the night. Dark bedroom. Real. This was real. But I could still see that high fae male face down in the snow, my arrow through his eye, red and bloody all over from where I'd cut and peeled off his skin. Bile stung my throat. Not real, just a dream. Even if what I'd done to Andrus, even if as a wolf was I scrubbed at my face. Perhaps it was the quiet, the hollowness of the past few days. Perhaps it was only that I no longer had to think hour to hour how to keep my family alive, but it was regret and maybe shame. I coated my tongue, my bones. I shuddered as if I could fling it off and kicked back to the sheets to rise from the bed. So she's finally feeling remorse for that. About damn time, to be honest. But, yep, chapter 11 done. We are on chapter 12. Chapter 12. Yeah, we played horror games today. It was fun. Okay. So not too much has happened. We found out that there's a bog, and the bogs are scary, and it actually almost killed Pharaoh. Yeah, we also learned that there's a bunch of other creatures out there. There was like a puka, that almost, it took the shape of her father and almost like lured her in to the woods because of it. And Tomlin has just been kind of doing his own thing, hunting the bog, so hasn't been really in contact with them. But I can tell she's like worried for him, constantly worried for Tomlin.